Welcome to Consider Yourself Hugged, a place to find comfort and support as you navigate your mental and emotional well-being. So sit back and relax, unless you're driving, and get ready for this week's hug. Well, hello, everyone. We're laughing because we were just talking about my biggest fear being to forget recording, and Michelle told me that I've done that before. So anyway.
Just once, a long time ago.
Long time ago. I guess things like that probably only need to happen once before you're super careful. But you're the backup, because when I hit record, then it says it makes you accept that.
Hit okay. Yes, yeah, it does.
You're my backup. So today is Michelle is taking the lead, and we are talking about Lisa Marie Presley's book, which I just finished a couple days ago on Audible, and I loved it. So we're just going to dive in. We'll talk at the end, by the way, about the upcoming, what the plan is for the upcoming books. I think you all know that The Hiding Place will be the next one, and it's longer. So make sure you jump in on that. But yeah, I'm ready, Michelle. I don't even know what Michelle's going to talk about. But I do have my own notes. So
I am so excited because I really love this book too, and I really had no idea what to expect when I started the book. It was actually before we even decided to do a kind of our version of our book club.
our little book club. Can I interject? I'm
Sure.
sorry. I forgot. We posted on Facebook this morning. And if you're listening, but you haven't read the book, I think this would be a good time for you to think for a moment. So that's why I wanted to interject. First thing that comes to mind when you hear Lisa Marie Presley. Okay, we gave you a moment. For you, Michelle, it was
That her relationship with Michael Jackson, because like in my lifetime, in my period of time when I would have been really engaged with entertainment and what was going on in the music industry and so forth, uh, that was big news. I didn't know a whole lot about Lisa Marie Presley before that. So that was what kind of came to mind at that time, which I'll talk about more in a minute. Like there was a lot of speculation about whether that was a real relationship, whether it was a real marriage or not. And the book, I feel like it really clears
cleared
all
that
of
up for
that
you.
up. But I mean, the
And
book is so much more than that.
well, it is. And when Michelle said she wanted to do this book, honestly, and there's about 10 years between us. I'm 10 years older than Michelle, and I don't know if that matters, but the only thing that came to mind for me was Elvis Presley. And honestly, I thought she died of a drug overdose. So that was first thought. And then actually I put this out on multiple things and talked to a few people, and some of the things that I heard honestly were kind of a loser child. I heard that. And drugs, I heard a wild child. I think those were, and then Michael Jackson, Elvis Presley, those are the things. So I just wanted you to think about that if you haven't read the book, because it's definitely different, I think, than you think. Okay, back to you.
Absolutely. So the title of it is From Here to the Great Unknown, and it is already a New York Times bestseller. And it is written by Lisa Marie Presley and Riley Keough. Riley Keough is Lisa Marie Presley's daughter, her oldest child. And so Riley Keough actually finished the book after Lisa Marie Presley passed. So the book starts out, it's paints this beautiful picture of what Graceland was like for Lisa Marie when she was young and that
Mhm.
relationship with Elvis. And it was really a beautiful thing. And then it kind of transitions to the loss of Elvis and what she experienced and how that experience was for her. She was 9 years old
Yeah,
at the time. And Riley mentions as well that that particular event in her life seemed to dictate highly a lot of the other
it did.
events in her life. And one of the main things in looking at this is how connection really plays out in a person's life and how like a disconnect so early on can affect so many different patterns, decisions, and so forth. And so that was kind of like a really interesting thing to read as the book went along in terms of her life decisions. And it wasn't an easy life. I think that a lot of times, like when someone is born into, like, I mean, Elvis Presley's a rock and roll legend.
Right.
So she was born into that. So there's a certain degree of, um, I don't know, it's not like, but again, her life wasn't easy. There is like, I think a mentality that, oh, like what could someone who was born in those circumstances possibly have that could be
To
difficult,
be
and it was a
difficult.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she talks about how she didn't really want all that. She wanted just a normal life. And it's hard. Like you said, I mean, you think about the money and the home and the fame and the things, but she really just seemed to want relationships.
Yeah, and the key thing I think that really
Connection,
spoke to
like you
me,
said.
yeah, the key thing that spoke to me about the book is, loneliness
Mm.
is such a powerful thing. And, you know, trying to connect in a world where like connections weren't always trustworthy, and they weren't always for her. She lost him very early.
Hmm.
And then she had multiple other situations where, like that, reaching out for connection just turned out to be hurtful. And so, one of the things in, I do some work with grief recovery. And one of the things in one of the grief recovery workbooks that I use says that with complicated grief in particular, it's oftentimes, in addition to miss and loss of the person, it is this sense that you wanted that relationship to be more, better, or different. And then, when a person is struggling with that more, better, different, it really can cause that complicated grief that is more than just something that we mourn for a
Wow.
certain amount of time, then it goes away. And it really seems like that was something that was a struggle. Like she carried that with her entire life.
Do you have that written down?
Yes.
Because that's really, I've never heard it put that way. And it feels like she wanted more, is what she really wanted from him. Did you take that away? Like
Yeah.
it was
Oh,
too short.
absolutely. It was too short and it was gone
She was too
and
young.
without warning for her because she was so young. And I know she was worried about him. She mentions that in the book, but still, it was
Did
very
you?
quickly.
I wrote down, but my notes are not always the greatest. So I wrote down he died when she was 9, and I put, did she go outside and smoke? I think I
Yes.
read she's 9 years old, and then I was reading that my note was watching others grieve. I remember she talked about seeing all these people like throwing themselves and wailing, and she's 9 years old and probably not given the comfort and attention that a 9 year old, I don't know that she said that, maybe she did, but you know, that a typical, you know, 9 year old might need and get.
Yeah, probably. I mean, she very much paints a picture of her as when she's talking about her childhood and she's talking about how like she knows she was difficult. She knows she kind of
She was a
ruled.
wild child.
Yeah, she ruled the roost at Graceland. She mentions even at like 5 years old telling someone that they were going to be fired if they didn't do what she
Right.
says. And
That's right.
so she kind of knew like she was absolutely the apple of Elvis's eye. And I'm sure whatever she wanted, like was what went. And so to go from having a force in your life like that to that being just gone. And
Just
so,
gone.
yeah, it doesn't sound like there was a whole lot of supervision.
No, no, no. And I wrote down too that she said she knew she was acted like a princess, but that people didn't know she was still filled with all this self-doubt and insecurities.
Mhm.
And, you know. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And it's interesting, like the more part, the fact that like she would go back to the bedroom. Excuse me. Like at Graceland, it talks about, like, especially when Riley and her brother were older, they would go back to Graceland and stay in Elvis's bedroom because that's where Lisa Marie felt close to him. So this lifelong search for this connection that is just gone.
You know that this whole part is really stood out to me because I was looking to see if I made any notes about it, but it made, I couldn't identify with having that kind of relationship with your father because I didn't have that. Um, and when you look at the pictures, which maybe we can post a few, I mean, I just Googled, some of the pictures of her and Elvis. I mean, he just looks at her like she was absolutely the apple of his eye. So I can't imagine. I mean, my dad left around that same time I was 10, but it was a different sort of grief because I wasn't losing that, and even though, because my dad was in country music, and so he was gone a lot, we didn't have that kind of lifestyle, of course, but I mean, he was always gone. But when he was home, it wasn't wonderful. And you look at that, and from what it sounded like, he just absolutely adored her. It's
Mhm.
hard. I mean, what about you? Do you connect with, I mean, I know with your dad. Sorry, we may
So,
be going on a whole different, you know how it is. Sorry.
um, so I think that I could relate to, because I've told before about how when my dad got sick, because my dad passed away of cancer, that I kind of set out to change the nature of our relationship a little bit, and it did not go well. It didn't go poorly. He wasn't upset, nothing like that. But I was hoping to connect with him, kind of that connection again, connect with him on a little deeper level. And that is not where he was.
You wanted it
And
to be
so
different.
I wanted it to be different. Yeah. And so I could relate in that sense where, you have that relationship and then there's that end. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, where do I go with this from here? So I understood that. And I really felt like, because again, like, I don't remember how old I was when she married Michael Jackson, but I was young. It was all over the news. MTV was a big thing, VH1, all of that. And I can remember, like, someone, like, there was a lot of people saying, oh, she married him for money because I think she was struggling financially at the time, or people thought she was struggling financially at the time. And he, at that point, like, things were a little odd around Michael Jackson. Some of the behavior and so forth it was already a little odd. And so from the book, it just really made sense because Michael Jackson was such a big presence and he had such an entourage,
Another
and the
big
feel,
presence.
yes. And so the feel around him
Hmm.
probably felt similar to what she had experienced when she was young. And I can definitely see how someone could get pulled into that. It's this notion that familiarity is something different than what it is. Like, familiarity for a lot of people can seem like love. You know what I mean? And it just, you know, it can seem like friendship. I mean, there's a lot of things that, sometimes if you feel something really familiar, if you're not, acutely aware that maybe that wasn't the healthiest, then it's
Feels.
something that people can
Mhm.
get drawn into. Does that make sense how I'm
Yeah, 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 yeah. I
yeah.
hope you have all this in writing too, because that's really interesting. Because I mean, when you think Michael Jackson, Elvis Presley, very similar in for lack of a better word, the bigness,
Mhm.
you know, of who they were.
Yeah, there was probably a lot of the same energy surrounding them.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then she ultimately left over the drugs, which, it's what ultimately ended her father's life. And so she just kind of put her foot down and said no.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. Yeah, the drug part was interesting too, with her experimentation when she was young, and then she just stopped until,
Yeah.
later. But yeah, she didn't want that. She didn't want that around her or her children.
And just like the struggle to be connected with the rest of the world, she still seemed to have this really strong connection with her children, or at least her older children. We don't hear a whole lot about the twins, but she
Yeah.
seemed to really be able to establish that connection
Yeah.
with them. So how about you? Kind of what spoke to you from the book?
Oh, gosh. I think some of the biggest things, first of all, I had no idea at all, really, um, about her life. Some of the things. So the father daughter and the mother daughter relationship probably both stood out to me the most. Like, even though I said that I couldn't identify with the closeness, one of the stories that I thought was so sweet, and I only made vague notes and I can't remember exactly the details, but I think she burned herself on, did she get on his bike? I think, which would make me think a motorcycle. But again, remember, Elvis passed when she was 9. So, and he had said,
I
do not,
remember, and she hid it. I don't remember if it was a motorcycle, something, and she hid it from him.
yes, and she hid it from him, and he got upset. And that made her, one of the things she said, when I think about as women, of course, not everyone who's listening today is a woman, but I know the research that I've read in the past, I don't know if there's anything new because I haven't updated, but oftentimes when women feel like a relationship is in jeopardy, our serotonin levels tend to drop. And there's
Mhm.
that. And so she talks in the book about he got mad at her and she felt like her world was ending. And I can, not necessarily with my dad, but I could identify with that in so many ways in relationships where then you talk to the person and it was just a simple misunderstanding and the relationship wasn't over. But then the sweet part, she shared that he came back to her, and I don't know how much time had passed. I'm hoping that people who are listening or watching will go on. If you haven't read or listened to the book, will do that. He said he comes to her room with a basset hound puppet, and then he's saying to her with the puppet, "I can't help falling in love with you." And I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, oh my gosh!" And then she talks about a poem that he read to her a lot about why God made little girls, or that he sang to her or something. Um, so that part spoke to me. Should I go on to the mother daughter, or do you have anything?
So I think that like that spoke to me as well. And like as much as he absolutely adored her and she knew it, it also could not have been easy at a young age because obviously he was struggling. He was struggling with substance use. And it sounded like his personality was very up and down, that he could be pretty volatile. And so I'm sure that wasn't easy for her either.
It's funny. Tim and I were. I kept saying to him, "Okay, I promise I'll stop talking about the book." Do you ever? Okay, I promise I'll stop talking about the book. Okay, one more thing. But I was telling him about, him adoring her and this, that, and the other. And Tim used to work in the music industry, and he knew a lot of people that knew Elvis who said, everybody said he was just a really nice guy, which I want to come back to that about some poverty things. But she talks about how he would get really angry, but she was never afraid of him. Like, she thought it
Yeah.
was funny,
Yeah.
you
Hmm.
know? And
Yeah.
the point that you made to our watchers and listeners, that was some language, definitely. And if you're listening to it, did you tell them Julia Roberts? Did you?
Well, I don't think I did. Julia Roberts narrates with Riley Keough. They both read. And it's one of the books that, you know, I often do audio books because it's more convenient, but I love to read. This is actually one because you get to hear some of the words in Lisa Marie's own voice because they
Yeah,
have
they.
recordings. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's one of the ones I think I would recommend doing an audiobook for because you can hear her talk.
I agree. But
Yeah.
even the cursing part, I mean, it didn't offend me at all. It was part of their life. And I think, I don't know if this hearing it is different because she talks about, um, Elvis and all of his family, who they all, many of them moved in together in this big home. But she would hear him say, I'm not going to say it, but GD, blah, blah, in that Southern sort of like
Mhm.
just
Oh,
that,
yeah, yeah.
that was their language.
Mhm.
That was their language. But I mean, I don't, so yeah, I think you're right. It seems like he definitely was volatile, but not mean.
You're right, not she wasn't afraid of him, more kinda like when he was upset, her world crashed a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, but then and then we'll, if you're okay, we'll go on to the mother-daughter part thing too. But I wondered, so you and I have talked before about there's a book, there's two of them written by Ruby Payne about poverty. One is What Every Church Member Should Know About Poverty. And then
Mhm.
the other one is A Framework for Understanding Poverty. But one of the things it talks about is when you grow up in poverty, that your view of money is that it is meant to be spent and shared and used for entertainment. And I was thinking about that the whole time, after Elvis got this money and all these people, his family moved in, he bought a house for his mother, he bought this, they took these lavish trips, they did. So it sounded like, from where he grew up, and I don't know anything about his finances, but that his view was money is to be shared, and it sounds
Yeah,
like,
it did seem that way. Yeah, aunts lived there, everyone lived there.
yeah, lots of people live there. That sounds horrible, but no, it really doesn't. But it's a lot of people, and that's how she grew up. That's how, but when you talked about loneliness, you can be around a ton of people, but still have that sense of loneliness, especially when that one special connection goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm kind of looking, she talks about his demons. Lisa Marie talks about Elvis's demons. She thinks sort of really began to build after he went into the military, which she says basically killed his mother, that she was just so distraught. Um, so let me see. Yeah, and then the other big thing that struck me was two mother-daughter relationships. Lisa Marie's with her mother, which Priscilla, which didn't seem to be fabulous. Did you take anything away from that?
So I feel like it definitely there was a struggle. It seemed like Lisa Marie, at times would try to give Priscilla grace, like
I thought,
from yeah,
yes.
um, Grace, like she would say things like, I don't think she knew what to do with me because Lisa Marie at no point in the book says she was an easy
No, she doesn't.
child, and yeah, she does not even try. So like she knew that she was a handful, and she gave Priscilla Grace a couple of different ways, like saying that she was difficult, but also saying that, Priscilla was 14 when she met Elvis. She was
She was just a baby.
21 when she married Elvis and 22 when she had Lisa Marie. And so her take on the world was a little different than probably
Yeah.
others.
I love that you brought that up, that she seemed to show her grace, because that's been a big part of my life too, is doing that, with my mom, who of course is passed, but doing the best they can. And then when you talked about Lisa Marie at no point saying she was easy, I also thought it was funny when she talked about yelling obscenities at the creeper fans. Like there would be, she called them creeper fans who would just always be there, and she would yell obscenities to them. Remember again, it might have been when she was older too. It might have been after Elvis passed, but she probably did it when she was young too.
Well, I mean, she talks about like throwing away their cameras. Like she would charge
Yes,
them twenty
tell that
dollars,
story.
promising a picture of Elvis. And then when she'd take their camera, they'd give her the $20. Sometimes she would return, but he wouldn't have a picture of Elvis. But they wouldn't know it because there were no instant cameras at the time. And then sometimes she just didn't even, she's like, I didn't even want to walk back over there. So I just threw it in the bushes.
Doesn't she talk about meeting someone later who says, hey, you took my camera and I never got it back?
Yes.
And she's like, I'm really sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
You and I have talked about just as a little heads up, we are going to do a book soon that's we've heard is very funny and lighthearted, but there was a lot of funny moments in this too. It was still very
Mhm.
heavy, but there were moments. But yeah, her relationship with her mom was definitely difficult, but still grace filling. But then Lisa Marie's relationship with Riley, or Riley's with her, um, just one of the things I told you, like all these words and these thoughts that people used to describe her, Lisa Marie, before not knowing anything about her, mother was not one of them. And
Mhm.
despite we all make mistakes as moms, as parents, but despite all of that, what shone through to me the most was that the love for her children seemed to
Yeah.
be just primal. And even Riley talks about my mom was just fierce, about her love from us. And she said, I don't know where she learned it. I don't think it was from her mom. Um, but that shone through me the whole time.
Yeah,
Through
I
to
mean,
me, not through me.
and Riley Keough is just seems like a very impressive
I
like
know.
person when it comes to um I mean, how she finished the book, how she speaks about her mother, how she seems to understand. It's like she's taking the time to understand because there were, I'm sure, parts of Riley Keough's life that were not easy either. I mean, this was kind of a roller coaster of a ride. And, Riley, her brother, I mean, they were along for the ride. So, she seemed to be someone who was probably a caretaker who kind of
It
was
feels that
needed.
way.
Yeah.
It feels that way. She even talks about at one point, the whole family moved into her house, and she's just taking care of people. And I don't know, what you want to talk about with the end of her life, but toward the end, she's just trying to the end of Lisa Marie's life, she's trying to caretake, but it feels like she made the most out of it. She did the best that she could, and I just did, with the EAP that I work with, I've done several lately on webinars on elder care. And one of the recommendations is for just mindset is to really think that at some point caretaking will become part of my life, just like full circle, that if we can see this caring for our parents is just a natural progression of life, it makes it easier for us to accept. So I don't know. Who knows what was actually going on in her head? But when you brought up that's why part of why I like the audio, not only because we do get to hear some extracts from the actual interviews, but the way that they did the back and forth between Riley sharing a little bit and then, well, Julia Roberts' voice, but then hearing that perspective from Lisa Marie, I just thought it was brilliant.
Yeah. It was really good, and it was really good to hear both perspectives.
Yeah, kind of filling in where, because I think you said this, she died before she finished it, and Riley filled in the gaps.
And like even with because I've seen many interviews now as I'm mentioning to you that once you say something, you put that out into the world. I don't know if we had a telephone conversation or whatever it was, all of a sudden your feed will have lots of different things. And so like lots of different interviews with Riley Keough in regards to this book kind of started popping up, and I've listened to a few of them. And she is really adamant that her mother wanted to do this because she wanted to be a help to people. She wanted to make it's just still about that connection. She wanted to connect with people. We haven't really talked about like the hardest part, probably. I think losing Elvis was hard. I think probably losing, she lost a son. And I think losing that was devastating for Lisa Marie, and she greatly wanted to help others and connect with people and give back to the
Yeah.
world. And so that seems to be kind of the motivation behind Lisa Marie's really motivation to write the book and Riley's agreement to finish the book for her.
I think they played one of the extracts where she said, everybody says that I'm strong, but so what? Who cares? What good does it do? But if anybody reading this, I don't know how she said it, if they're going through something similar and it helps, that's the only thing that really matters.
Mhm.
And that's huge. It is about supporting and helping. I don't know if you saw, I just finally posted on Facebook this morning. I did a little video about you, um, because it is like this. I hadn't intended to say this, but it's about like what all matters. It's about supporting and helping and being there. And just the short story, I was on a walk talking to Michelle, and a man pulled up and asked for directions. And it seemed like it was going to be complicated. So I said, Michelle, I'll call you back. She said, okay. And so then I'm giving this man directions. And then I realized Michelle had not hung up. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. I thought I told you I'd call you back. She goes, you did. You know how Michelle is. She's just so quiet, like you did. And I said, well, and why didn't you hang up? She's like, no, I didn't know who that was. I didn't know if it was a killer, or I was
And
like,
I knew you didn't know who it was. And
I didn't. It
so
was a
I
stranger.
heard the guy pull up in the car and I was like, just gonna stay on
No.
just in case. Yeah, just in case.
And that's that's what matters, is just being there to help each other, in little moments like that, or with our experiences, what we've been through and the trauma that she went through and got through it and used it to help others. But I didn't know, how much do you want to share about the Ben story? Ben
Well,
is
I think
Lisa Marie's, or Riley's brother. Lisa Marie's.
yeah. So Lisa Marie had two older children with her first husband, right? Danny
And
Keough.
with Danny, yeah, I think he was both of their dads. Yeah.
Yes, he was. And so Riley was oldest and then Ben. And then Lisa Marie, I don't know how many years, maybe 16 years later or more. I'm
That
not
I
even
don't know.
sure. Yeah, I don't know how long, but she's got a set of twins as well. And so
With the different.
yes, with
Yeah.
her, yeah.
So there
And
were
so
four marriages, I think, right?
yes, so with her
Okay.
fourth husband, she
Yeah.
had um twins. And so they lost Ben when he was just 21 they lost him by suicide. And obviously devastating.
Mm,
And one of the things that Riley talked often in the book about how deep of a connection Lisa Marie and Ben had,
yeah.
and that she really kind of felt like after he died that they were just on borrowed time with Lisa Marie. She didn't really know how long Lisa Marie would kind of make it in the world without him.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty powerful too, that it was. Now, I didn't write it down. How long? It wasn't long, like a year or so after Ben's death that Lisa died.
I think it was a little longer than that, but
Couple
it
years maybe. It
wasn't,
wasn't
yeah,
long.
it wasn't much longer. No.
Yeah. Um, which is, it makes me think about, well, lots of different things, but my friends who have lost children, and I mean, dying by suicide, losing by suicide is obviously even tougher. Um, that's a big loss. That's a really big loss. And then, one of the things that I said that I thought and that other people thought was that I thought she died from an overdose, but she
No.
didn't. And oh, we should say this too, because I think this is important. So she experimented with drugs a lot when she was young and then cut them out. And she never, other than I think she drank some, But when her twins were born, they gave her opiates. They were by C-section, and that, sparked that addiction, and it just tore her body up. And she had a heart attack. But she
Yeah.
tried. She really tried to get off those pills. But I guess she hadn't had opiates before, right? I mean, her drug use when she was younger, that's kind of how
Yeah, I don't know if she had or how that at that time, but but Riley just talking in the book about how it just kind of like grabbed a hold of her,
yeah,
and that it was difficult for Lisa Marie in many ways, but it was difficult from the aspect of not being the mother to her twins that she wanted
yeah,
to be, because it was very important to her to be the mother that she wanted to be. I was kind of like with to my last takeaway point or lesson from the book, and substance use produces such hopelessness. I think, when whether you're talking about like what her son was experiencing, what she was experiencing, it really can convince someone that there is just no hope or no way
yeah.
out. And so, like, she did eventually go to treatment. I think there was a weight loss surgery that contributed to a lot of the physical health symptoms that were going on.
I was shocked when I heard that because, I went and looked at pictures, and she said she had always been made fun of for being overweight. And I'm like, what? Like, I didn't, anyway,
I mean, it's one of those things, overweight by whose standards?
exactly.
By
Yeah.
Hollywood standards. I mean, she's absolutely beautiful.
She was beautiful. Like, I
Mhm.
wouldn't have, like, I was totally surprised. Totally
Yeah.
surprised.
And I think that like it's important to mention that when you have that disconnect, when you have that lack of connection, and you have that loneliness, um, and then someone turns to substance use, that can really be a a really tragic combination.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely can. Um, and she, I'm trying to think of last little things that I wrote down too. She was also sexually abused at one point in her life. Um, but that wasn't the point what was the point that I wanted to make, Michelle?
Well, there was
Oh, I remember.
different periods of time where people used her because of who she
Yes.
was, and it
Yes.
made it more difficult even to connect and trust people.
That's right. And sorry, this is a little different, but I keep forgetting. Riley talks about how her mom and dad, so Danny, built a great life for them and did just so that's, I mean, for you divorced parents out there, or, I always love hearing because we tried really hard when my ex-husband and I divorced, and I love hearing stories where, because you hear all the bad things, and she talks about my parents, they really tried, and they maintained a relationship, and they put us first. And I thought that was really sweet for her to acknowledge that too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But overall, I
Well,
really enjoyed the book. I got a lot from it,
me too.
and it's really interesting to listen to. It is not something you're going to be um, bored with, even if you're not really familiar with Lisa Marie Presley. So,
No, you're right. Because when you told me, I was like, well, okay, sure. And when I first started listening, I was like, and within just a few minutes, I was like, okay, this is really good. Oh, and there was one other thing I identified with on her because she felt grown at such a young age. And this was me. She said, I didn't like anyone telling me what to do. I was like that too. And still am to a degree. I don't like to be told what to do. Well, what do you think? Have we covered all the things you wanted to cover?
I think so. And like, obviously, we have a short amount of time. It is a great book. There are way more things in the book
Oh,
worth discovering and listening to. And we would love to hear your comments, what you got
yeah.
from the book, what spoke to you about it. And yeah, I think so. So I'm excited about next week too.
Me too. In fact, why don't we do it this way? Let's do all that other stuff, and then I'll read the eulogy, and we'll just do the hug and say goodbye. Is that all right with you?
Sounds great.
Because I don't want to read the eulogy and then have to stop and go through all the other stuff. So, okay, next week we will be doing The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. We'll make sure to repost the Audible and the Amazon link. And then the week after, right? Is that what we decided?
Yes.
Okay. So we put the call out to different things. We put the call out to each other, to Chat GPT, to a couple of friends. We wanted to have something because that was a little bit light because we're doing two nonfiction that are pretty heavy. And then we're going to finish with a self-help, which I'll tell you. But the one that we chose, now why am I not finding it? Well, hang on, let me pull it up again. So the one that we chose came from another Michelle in our world who reads probably 100 books a year. I don't know, she is like an avid reader. And it is called The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. So I know it sounds, we wanted something that wasn't too long. She said it's like 400 pages and what did we say, like maybe 10 or 11 hours on
Mhm.
Audible. So
13. It's
Oh,
13.
13. Okay. And Michelle and I, neither one. We wanted to have at least one book that we could both discover together. So we'll post that. So it's total fiction and supposedly a lot of laughs, a lot of fun. A lot of people recommended it. Um, our other Michelle said it may have a few language things, but so we want to let you know that. And then our final book, we'll post this too. I have read, you have not, right?
I have not read Chatter.
And it's the one that I've mentioned over and over and over again. So it made sense. We wanted to do one that was, really self-help. And it's the one that I've referenced a lot called Chatter by Ethan Cross. And so it's about when our mind spirals. So rather than just keep putting snippets here and there, we'll just do a whole. And that one is only like, I got that one on Kindle. So I'm not sure about and um, Audible. It's like 5 hours, 5.5 hours. So what else? Does that kind of
I
cover everything?
think that's all. Do you guys like next week's going to be amazing? That book is amazing, The Hiding Place.
I know I'm very excited. I can't find my notes that I made. So, and I'm like Michelle when I'm driving, I love to listen to Audible, but I like to read as well. But The Hiding Place was on Audible. Okay, well then do all the things, like, rate, download, share, follow us, all the things. And then are we ready to end with
Yes.
the
Yeah.
thing? Okay.
Mhm.
So when Lisa Marie passed, Riley wrote a eulogy to honor her mother. And just so you know, she was unable to read it. Her husband, who was also Ben, which was an interesting thing that they talked about, Ben, and Ben. So Ben read this for her, and I am going to read it to you. As Riley, sorry, here's the start. It was called A Letter to My Mama. I hope I can make it through this. Thank you for being my mother in this life. I am eternally grateful to have spent 33 years with you. I am certain I chose the best mother for me in this world, and I knew that as far back as I can remember you. I remember everything. I remember you giving me baths as a baby. I remember you driving me in my car seat, listening to Aretha Franklin. I remember the way you'd cuddle me when I'd come to your bed at night, and the way you smelled. I remember you taking me for ice cream after school in Florida. I remember you singing to me and my brother lullabies at night and how you'd lay with us until we fell asleep. I remember how every time you'd leave town, you'd bring me a new tea set from Cracker Barrel. I remember all the notes you'd leave in my lunchbox every day. I remember the feeling I'd get when I'd see you picking me up from school. I remember how it felt to be loved by the most loving mother I've ever known. I remember how safe it felt to be in your arms. I remember that feeling as a child, and I remember it 2 weeks ago on your couch. Thank you for showing me that love is the only thing that matters in this life. I hope I can love my daughter the way you loved me and the way you love my brother and my sisters. Thank you for giving me the strength, my heart, my empathy, my courage, my sense of humor, my manners. That makes me laugh, sorry. My temper, my wildness, my tenacity. I am a product of your heart. My sisters are a product of your heart. My brother is a product of your heart. We are you. You are us, my eternal love. I hope you finally know how loved you were here. Thank you for trying so hard for us. If I didn't tell you every day, thank you. And until we see you next time, consider
Consider
yourself
yourself